Hmm. Dear Santa, this year for Christmas, I would like the following. A giant Godzilla! Hey, Tubies, Psychic Bob here. Well, I tell you, I am having a ball today. Look what I just got. Look at this. I got me a giant Godzilla. Oh my God, you have no idea how many years I have been waiting and wanting to get a giant Godzilla like this. Isn't this great? You know, since being a kid in the 1970s, I used to watch all the Godzilla movies. I was into Godzilla. And, you know, back in the 70s, it was harder to get toys unless they were local to your area. So I might see a Godzilla movie on TV. I'd go to my toy store, and they wouldn't have a Godzilla. Or maybe they would have one, but my mom wouldn't let me have it because she thought, oh, it's too violent or it's too, you know, expensive or whatever. So I never got my Godzilla. And then when I was a teenager, back in the 1980s, they came out with one of the newer released Godzilla movies. It had been many years since the 70s. And in 1985, they came out with a new Godzilla movie. And they re-released this giant Godzilla toy. And I remember back then thinking, oh, that is so cool. I used to see it on TV and I thought, I want one. I can never find it locally. And you have to remember, like, where we lived, you know, this was the times before the internet. If something wasn't local, we didn't have an internet. We could just go and see if we could find one. It's just you either had or you didn't. So I remember seeing this giant Godzilla toy. This is the 14-inch one, which is really cool. And always thinking, gee, I want one. I'd even seen it on TV shows. And anyways, recently I was watching an old movie from the 1980s, and one of the characters had this Godzilla in their room. It was in the background in this set. And I brought back that memory because that movie was from the time when this movie of Godzilla came out. I thought, oh, that, you know, they got that Godzilla. Well, guess what? I thought, magic of the internet, and Psychic Bob went and found a Godzilla. Now, this one is not an original from 1985, but it is the exact same one. It's a new re-release. They've recently brought this back. And this is the exact one that I saw in 1985 that I was crazy about. So I think the coloring's a little different. I think it had more of a green coating on it, like green and gray. This one's blue and gray. But it's got the big scales down the back and the big long tail. And look at the face. I mean, that is so classic Godzilla. Hey, I never said I was sane. I just said it claimed to be psychic. Anyways, I got my Godzilla. And I know I'm like a kid. I mean, I really am. But, you know, they say the only difference between men and boys is the cost of their toys. And I don't care how old I get, I still love my toys. So I got my giant Godzilla, and I'm loving it. Isn't he just cool? Look at that. He can show up his face again. Look at his eyes looking at you. Now, you know what's funny about Godzilla? This is going to actually tie in with today's video, because we're going to talk about dragons today. Godzilla, if you follow the history of the movie, some of you may, probably most people are not Godzilla movie freaks like I am, but Godzilla started out in the 1950s. I think it was around 1954, 55, when the first Godzilla movie came out. And this was during the 50s when monster movies were all the thing. And Godzilla started out because he came from an island in the South Pacific where atomic testing had been done. And he was a product of radiation gone wild. Now, you remember the 1950s, they used to have a lot of monster movies. They had the creature from the Black Lagoon, who was a product of radiation. They had movies about giant ants that invaded Earth and creatures from Mars. And the 50s were famous for their monster movies, and Godzilla was part of that era. Now, what's really cool is Godzilla, when he started out, was considered a monster that terrorized Japan. He tore up downtown Tokyo like nobody. But they slowly evolved him, and as they got into the 60s, his creature power changed from being the terror of Tokyo to being the defender of Tokyo, the defender of all Japan. And what happened is whenever there would be a crisis, like a giant monster appear from that radiation island in the South Pacific, Godzilla would emerge from the sea to defend Japan. So he went from being a terrifying monster to destroy Japan to being a monster who saved Japan. And I love that they added that twist into his character, that Godzilla became, instead of nightmare, she became beloved of children everywhere, and is a sign of the power of, belief in good things. And they used to have in some of the Japanese movies that have like scenes where the Shinto priests would pray, like when there was a crisis in Japan, they'd pray, and Godzilla would come up, and they used to always act like Godzilla answered our prayers, because in Shinto they believe in the kami, and the kami can take forms. Then I don't think they formally called Godzilla a kami in Japan. Kami is how that's spelled. Not communist, kami, it means ancient gods. But they certainly reverenced him like a kami ultimately. So he is one of the protectors of Japan. Anyways, I had to share it with you because this brings up a really good question. A number of you have been writing me, said, Psychic Bob, I have dreams about dragons, or when I meditate, I see dragons. I feel as if dragons are speaking to me. And some of you said, well, Bob, could this even be real? Is it possible to have dragons? Oh, come on, Bob. Isn't that just fantasy? Well, let me tell you, dragons are real. That's right. I want to talk about them today. So give me just a moment. I'm going to set Godzilla down. Godzilla is safely ensconced in his altar. Now, to talk about dragons, Godzilla could be thought of as a form of a dragon. I think so. People say, are dragons real? Well, according to many reliable historical experiences, they are real. Now, people are going to say, well, Psychic Bob, I don't see any dragons on the earth. Yeah, right. Okay. Well, one example of a dragon, which is an aquatic dragon, is the Loch Ness Monster. For those of you who live in Scotland, hello, Amy Diana. Are you out there? Maybe she'll see this. She's a friend of mine out of Scotland. Amy Diana lives up in Edinburgh. I don't know how far. I think Loch Ness is a lot farther north, but there's a lake in Scotland called Loch Ness, which means Lake Ness. And they have a creature in there called the Loch Ness Monster. And many people over many years, since like the early 1900s, have filmed this creature. And it's literally like a giant dragon. It's like a snake aquatic creature. Its head comes up and it's hundreds of feet long. And it's actually caused boats to flip over. And it's not a violent creature, but it does make itself known. So that, I think, is one example of a dragon that is still on the earth, okay? Now, what's also fascinating is when we talk about dragons, dragons are found around the world, no matter what culture you are. There are dragons that come out of the east, out of China and Japan and Asia. Well, what do those dragons look like? Well, let's put some pictures up here. Here are some pictures of Japanese or Asian, Chinese dragons. Take a look at these. Aren't those pretty cool? I love the Chinese dragons. At the end of those clips, there were some dragons that appeared that were decorative dragons. And if you go to Chinatown here in Washington, D.C., At Chinese New Year every year, they have giant dragons like that in the streets that dance and maneuver, and they're a lot of fun. I've got to see the dragons up close, and I love them. But what's interesting is there are two, as I said, two types of dragons. There's the Chinese or Eastern style dragons and the Western. Now, the Chinese dragons, as you notice there, are more snake-like. Okay, they're more serpent-like. They're kind of a combination of like a lion, like the head is kind of like a lion, and the body is like a snake. But what's interesting is in Chinese mythology, they're not considered evil or scary. They're considered reverential. Whenever a Chinese person would see a dragon, it was a sign of blessing and protection. It was as if the gods were saying, we're with you and protect you. So even today in Chinese culture, dragons are still very loved and very treasured. Now, hold on just a second, I forgot. Let me show you some of my porcelain that has Chinese dragons on it. Now, as I said, in China, dragons are loved. They're so beloved that they even put them on beautiful porcelain pieces. This is a jar that I have, a Chinese porcelain jar. I use it to put wands in. Here's some of my wands. I'll tell you all about these wands. This will be a different video, but today, just know I use this to hold wands. A very magical jar. Now, if you look closely, you'll see there's the head and the body of a giant Chinese dragon. I know we got some glare here. Isn't that beautiful? Now, a lot of times around dragons, they have flames of fire that follow them. Some of them may breathe fire, but it's like wherever they go, there's light and fire around them. Isn't that just beautiful? And it goes around to the other side with one facing the opposite direction. You see it there? Isn't that beautiful? Another Chinese dragon. So I'm a big fan of the Chinese dragon. Now, I also have another porcelain piece. I collect Asian porcelain. My problem is I collect too much. But here's another amazing dragon. Now, isn't that beautiful? Look at that. Can you see the body here? Here's the head up here and the eyes. And then you see the long bodies. Now, they have legs on it, but the body is overall very snake-like. You'll notice that it has scales on it. He travels among the clouds. It's believed that the Chinese dragons, very much like the Western dragons, fly and travel through flight and carry a lot of magical power. So in the Chinese tradition, as I said, dragons are considered signs of blessing, signs of good luck. So there you go. There are two Chinese dragon porcelain pieces. Now, hold on. Let me set my wands down here before I break them. Now, this brings us to the next part of our show, which is about Western dragons. People say, well, what about the West? We have dragons here, don't we? Yes, we do. And in fact, in the Western culture, there are actually historical references to dragons. If we go way back to the time of Jesus Christ, it was believed after the death and resurrection of Jesus that all the apostles went out in the world to tell everybody about Jesus. Well, one of those missionaries that was sent out was Saint Martha. Saint Martha of Bethany, one of my favorite saints, because Martha went all the way from Jerusalem, traveled to Western Europe. It's believed that she and Mary Magdalene showed up on the shores of southern France in a boat. And they were well received by the people there. And Martha and Mary lived in France and started kind of teaching people about God and things like that. Well, one day the townspeople, this was in the southern coast of France, came to Martha and they said, we don't know what to do. There is a dragon who is coming into town. He breathes fire and he burns up people's houses and he attacks them and he kills them. He's killed children and he's dangerous. We want to kill him, but we are scared. And they said, Martha, maybe you can help us. You're wise and you knew the apostles. What would your God have us do? And they said, we want to kill the dragon. And Martha said, no, let me investigate this. And Martha went to this cave. There was an area outside the town where there was caves, and this dragon supposedly lived in a cave. And Martha went into the cave. Now, the townspeople that followed her there to observe this were terrified. They said, "Oh, don't go in. He'll kill you. He'll kill you." Martha believed in God. She said, "I believe God has brought me here, and he will not abandon me." So she asked that somebody bring a vial, like a pot of holy water. And she went into the cave and she encountered the dragon, literally face to face. And when he tried to roar and attack her, she grabbed the holy water and threw it on the dragon. And it stunned the dragon, and it must have blessed him, that power of that water she threw. And he became very docile. And then she led him out of the cave on a leash. No joke, there are witnesses to this. You can research this. It actually happened in France. And the dragon became her pet for the rest of her life. So many times you'll see pictures of Martha with a dragon on a leash, and that's where that comes from. Now, that she's not the only person in the West that encountered a dragon. In England, good old England, hail England, Mother England. And those of you who are British, I'm sure you know this one. There's the story of St. George. That's right. St. George was a knight back in medieval England. And he oftentimes would go out on adventures. And he went out on an adventure to find a dragon and slay it. Like in France, there were dragons in England at the time. This was in the Middle Ages, probably 1100s, 1200s. And there was an evil dragon who was very violent. It actually breathed fire. It killed people. It ripped apart children. It was merciless. And many of the townspeople believed that it was like a demon or that it was possessed. And St. George, in his good, bountiful Christian nature, went to save the people, as a knight would do. And he slayed the dragon, finally defeated it. I wish, between you and I have to be honest, I don't like that story. I wish that he had befriended the dragon like St. Martha did. But St. George had to do what he had to do. Sometimes wild beasts are just wild beasts, and that's all you can do. But he did slay the dragon. He became very famous because he saved the townspeople again, like Martha did, saved them from a lot of destruction and terror. In the West, the view of the dragon is much more scary. Most people view dragons as, they're monstrous. But, I think that really the dragon has been misunderstood also in the West. Luckily, we're at a time now where people are starting to awaken spiritually, and they're again encountering dragons. Now, they're not seeing them necessarily physically on the earth, but people are encountering the dragon through meditations. And people are saying, "Are dragons real?" They are. In fact, let me put up here, these are some pictures of Western dragons. And you'll notice there's a picture in here of St. Martha. That's the woman. She's in green, and there's a dragon. That's St. Martha. And you'll see St. George, because he's often shown riding a horse, spearing a dragon. And we'll put some of the other dragon images up here. So take a look at these dragons. Pretty amazing, huh? You'll see that they're a little different than the Chinese dragons. They're more kind of like dinosaurs, or they have more lizard-like bodies rather than snake-like bodies. But they do seem similar, and I think, the case can be argued that dragons exist in many species and forms, just like there are birds. There are eagles that are birds, there are finches that are birds, there are canaries, there are parrots. They're all birds, different styles. I think dragons are the same way. There are Eastern dragons, there are Western dragons. Just like the races of people are Western people, there are Asian people. You see, so why shouldn't dragons have different forms as well? So anyways, now people are saying, "Well, Psychic Bob, what is this you're talking about that people are re-encountering dragons?" Well, as people are opening to spirituality, they're discovering that life is multidimensional. And I believe that the dragons, though they may not, at least very many, be physically on the earth anymore, they do reside in the etheric plane, the astral realms. Right next to the earth, the closest realm is the first layer of the etheric realm. And it's in the etheric realm that all life exists. This is where we find the Fae people. It's where people first go when they cross over after death, that the spirit people live. And in that realm exist creatures such as unicorns. Yes, unicorns exist there. And dragons. So if you want to know where the dragons are, they exist in the etheric realm. Now, if you want to contact a dragon, you might want to think about setting up a little place to do meditation. Now, you can contact a dragon through just closing your eyes and calling them to you. But maybe better yet, to help you connect, you might want to make a little dragon shrine. So you could print out a picture of a dragon, one that appeals to you, one that doesn't scare you but excites you, and frame that and put that in your area of meditation to help yourself connect to the spirit of the dragon. Like me, maybe you just love Godzilla and he's a form of the dragon. You could have a little Godzilla on your altar, okay? That's clearly a form of the dragon and a protective one. I would encourage you not to seek to make a connection with a violent dragon because they still exist too, unfortunately. But as I said, I think most dragons, at least in the West, were misunderstood. And were not really dangerous. They were feared for just simple lack of knowledge. So, call to yourself. If you want to work with a powerful protector, you can call the dragon to you. I know when I first started out in my spiritualist training, my teacher said, find a power animal that is your guardian. And I still have him, but back then he was really close to me, a giant snake. I had a cobra, because I love snakes. It was a cobra, it was 12 feet tall. Like, it would stand up, and open its hood, it was over 12 feet tall. Well, I said, well, that's really interesting. I connected with that cobra in meditation. I said to my teacher, I said, is that really possible that there could be a cobra 12 feet tall? I've never seen one. And she said, oh, absolutely. On the etheric plane, these things exist. And I said, really? She said, all that you can imagine, all that you can conceive has a reality. She said, many people brush it off and say, oh, that's just in your mind, it's not real. She said, but the human mind has the ability to interface with other dimensions that are just as real and tangible as our dimension. So, this is why I say, are dragons real? And what about people who claim to connect with the spirit of the dragon? Well, they're telling you the truth. They do have that connection. They do feel that presence. And it's something that you can call on. So if you need a mighty protector, you might want to explore more upon dragons. Okay? Anyways, guys, I'm going to keep this short because I got more work to do. But I was so excited to come here and bring my new Godzilla to you. Isn't he wonderful? I'm crazy. I'm just a kid at heart. But I'm having a lot of fun with him. And I've wanted one for, probably 40 years now. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm in my 50s. So since I was a kid, I was like close to 40 some years, I've wanted one of these. And now I got it. So I'm enjoying it. I have a lot of fun. And I hope that, today's reminded you to also bring out your inner child. Have some fun. Maybe you remember a favorite toy from when you were little. Go see if you can find one. Maybe it's a Godzilla. It doesn't have to be a Godzilla. It could be anything. Maybe it's a doll that you like. Maybe it was a toy truck. I think when you find and rediscover some of the things from childhood that brought you joy, I think it's a great way to renew your spirit and have fun. Having fun brings joy to the soul, and it helps you live longer, look better, be healthier, and happier. So guys, thanks for being here today. Thank you for allowing me to bring my giant Godzilla to you and share him with you. I hope you've enjoyed this today, and tell me in the box below, have you ever encountered a dragon, whether on earth or in the spiritual realms? Maybe you work with the dragon. Maybe that's one of your totems. Yes, a dragon can be your totem. Tell me about that in the box below. I can't wait to hear. All right, guys, I love you. Keep it here at Spirit Channel. Tomorrow is Vlog Thursday. I don't know what we're doing yet. PsychicBob's got a pretty full reading schedule, so it may be a short vlog tomorrow. But we'll have something. Make sure to be here. By the way, speaking of reading schedules, I do have some openings now for the next week. I'm pretty booked up this week now. But if you want to get on my schedule for a private session, give me a call, 703-825-3929. My link for my phone number will be below, or you can write to me at my new email, PsychicBobHickman@gmail.com. That link will also be below. You guys are the best. I love you. Thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow. Until then, may you all always blessed be.